All right. Next up, we have Predictive Oncology, otherwise known as POAI. Predictive Oncology Inc. operates as a science-driven company on the oncology drug discovery. It provides various solutions for the oncology drug development. The company, through the integration of scientific rigor and machine learning, has developed the ability to advance molecules into medicine by introducing human diversity earlier into the discovery process with the pairing of artificial intelligence in the biobank of approximately 150,000 tumor samples. I think this is particularly important just as an oncologist. You know, the number of times I have to tell a patient, or imagine you're sitting across an oncologist and say it has about a 30 to 65% chance of working, right? And you're wondering, well, what am I on, the 30 or the 65? And a lot of the things that we do are just so tailored towards proactive, like this opts you for a treatment, opts you in. But I assume with AI, you're now considering the escape mechanisms and, you know, all these other factors that make that such a broad delta. And that's where AI can help rather than the study itself be able to compare tumor cycle samples, as you'll learn about in a second. And you'll learn about that from the CEO, Raymond Vennare. Mr. Vennare brings more than 30 years of experience as an accomplished senior executive, board director, and biotech entrepreneur. As a seasoned professional who has founded, built, and managed multiple companies on behalf of institutional investors, private foundations, and research institutions, Mr. Vennare has a long history of leading companies that range from bioinformatics, diagnostics, and therapeutic drug delivery to FDA-cleared medical devices. Throughout his career, Mr. Vennare has played a key role in the capitalization, development, and commercialization of innovative and novel technologies. Thank you much.
So, get a full screen. Can I go to full screen on this on the computer? It doesn't matter. I'll just read from the screen. So my name is Raymond Vennare. I'm the CEO of Predictive Oncology. I'm here just to tell you a little about who we are, what we do, how we do it, and why it's important. So we are a publicly traded company. So as you heard just a moment ago, if you want to learn more about the company, you can access our filings with the SEC, in particular our 10K, particularly our 10K. So I'm going to go around this way. So we utilize artificial intelligence to accelerate drug discovery and to advance drug development. What does that mean? It means that, you know, we're sort of like the old BASF. We don't make the airplanes. We make the materials that people use to build the airplanes and pilots fly. So we work with biopharmaceutical companies, researchers, and developers to utilize our platform, our PEDAL platform, which is a validated platform operating at about 92% accuracy on a tumor sample's response to a drug, and this functions primarily as accurately as it does because the information behind the utilization of the artificial intelligence and machine learning is having access to our own proprietary biobank of 150,000 tumors across 137 approximately tumor types and approximately 25, almost 30 years of drug response data associated with those tumor samples. And the ability to actually test, you heard this probably from during the break at lunch, being able to take those in silico models, which I'll explain in a minute, into the CLIA lab and actually create custom assays to test those assumptions, those in silico assumptions, and then feed that information back into the platform. So the platform is actually three things. It's not one thing. A lot of people have AI, and a lot of people utilizing AI utilize it for drug discovery, drug development, different reasons, different ways, different applications. Our platform works in the way that it works because it relies upon the actual tumor samples. So driving the entire platform is the core active learning component, which was developed at Carnegie Mellon University, spun out as quantitative medicine. Predictive oncology acquired quantitative medicine. And that is the engine that contains decades of patient data, outcome data, and patient data that is then used as a basis for our analysis. The tumor assays that we develop are then rely upon essentially outcome data, not just the outcome data from the core active learning, but outcome data that we have inherent in the drug response database. These are some of the, although primarily, I should say that primarily those data, the tumor samples are gynecological samples. About 50%, 60% are gynecological samples, 50% of those are ovarian, which is a focus for us. And then the other 40% are I won't say equally divided, but certainly more than 500 samples of each of many other tumor types. As I said, approximately more than 137 subtypes. So what's the problem? What's the solution? What's the problem we're trying to solve here? Well, I think everybody knows that anywhere between 92% and 98% of drugs fail in clinical trials, right? And that's a major issue. And the reason that most of these drugs fail in clinical trials is because you don't see the heterogeneity of the patient, for the most part, until you're well into the clinical trial process. So because inherent in those 150,000 tumor samples, which were taken at point of diagnosis or first surgical intervention, we actually have the heterogeneity of those patients that are built into the models that we use, and I'll explain what the models are in a second. So in essence, the problem we're trying to solve is failure, the failure of drugs, the failure of candidates that could become drugs, and the mitigation of that risk. So if you're able to identify targets that have a high probability of success that can move through drug development more quickly, what you're essentially doing is accelerating drug discovery with a high probability of success. And I'll explain that in a second. So I think everybody's aware in this room of what the process is. So molecules and targets, right? Either someone develops a molecule, identifies a molecule or a compound that they think is a viable candidate, a viable target. They screen it. They look for the hits to the leads, lead optimization, and candidate selection. That is a 5-year process, roughly a 5-year process, tens of millions of dollars, depending on how far down the path you go, could be even more than that. So I'll explain the bottom here in a second with an actual example. So we were brought several compounds that would have gone through this process at the top. We were asked very specific questions about whether or not those compounds would behave in the way they thought they would behave, and that the mechanism of action or the features of the structures were going to result in a certain outcome. We were able to truncate that 5-year process into about 4 months, and we were able to do it by utilizing the platform itself that I showed you before. So we input initial data. The initial data is some of the data that was brought to us by this particular partner. Some of it were in public databases, but the majority of it was really the data and the samples that we had. We were able to then model the questions that they wanted to have answered, and then develop a custom assay in the CLIA laboratory, feed that information back in, and they were able to make a go, no-go decision about whether or not they thought that those compounds were actually going to work. So the model that I'm referring to, the in silico model, is the actual drug-tumor response. Will this tumor respond to this drug, to this molecule, to this compound, to this biomarker, to this target in the way that they think it's going to respond? And so in this particular case, 2 of the 3 compounds did not respond in the way they thought, which was a win, right? Because that means they're not going to take those into development, and they've just saved the entire top line there of development and all the money associated with it. So it really accelerates a go, no-go decision. This does not supplant the scientist, right? This accelerates the decision-making process for scientists to make informed scientific decisions. So Sorry, I can't see this from the side. So we've developed a number of collaborations over the last year. One of which is an academic relationship, which really just provides access to information for us, gives us a peek behind the curtain about what people are looking for, looking at what's being developed in different universities and research institutions and abstracts. So if you walk around the room outside, when you look at the work that's being done right now, the abstracts that are posted out there, abstracts and posters that are out there, that's an indication, if they're successful, of what people will be working on several years from now. So it's a peek into the future from an academic or research point of view. We have a collaboration with a company by the name of Severgenics, which is with whom we were trying to identify drug combination, either drug repurposing or drug combination opportunities around radiosensitizers and radioprotectors. So they're highly focused on radiation oncology. There's a platform that they have. It's called the PGRT platform, Precision Genomic Radiation Therapy Platform, which can identify patients through a screen, basically an assay, whether that patient is sensitive or resistant to radiation. So obviously, if you're able to identify a patient's, let's say, sensitivity, then they would need a lower dose and fractionation, right? They would need a lower dose over a shorter period of time. And that's sort of the objective. And those that are resistant, you want to make more sensitive. Now, from a clinical point of view, that's really has more to do with therapeutic planning, right? It's the planning the treatment of that patient. From our point of view, with respect to drug discovery, drug development, we actually have our senior vice president of biologics at one of our facilities in Alabama, actually, is a former astronaut. He was actually the chief scientist on the space station. He has a very strong relationship with NASA, and NASA is actually interested in this. It's the reason we did the collaboration, because they're looking at ways to protect astronauts in deep space, especially as we go deeper and deeper into space and spending much more time there. So they wanted to know, they have no interest in developing a drug, right? They want to know, are there any drugs currently out there that when combined can be radio protectors, because they want to protect the astronauts, or drugs that are out there that can be repurposed. So that has a very, very specific application as far as the application that we use for artificial intelligence that isn't necessarily intuitive. I'll mention Cancer Research UK in a moment. That is the organization with whom we did the compound, whose compounds we queried, and the results that I just described. Integra's more on the biologic side, so I'm going to pass over that. We just completed successfully completed a multi-year retrospective study with UPMC Women's Hospital in Pittsburgh. We worked with them to build multi-omic machine learning models to predict overall short and long-term survival in ovarian cancer with a high degree of success, which I'll touch on in a second here. So cancer, if you know Cancer Research UK, it's the single largest funder of cancer research in the world, private funder of cancer research in the world. They spend about $370 million a year with thousands of cancer researchers. They have 11 drugs currently in the market and about 160 under development. They make their money by doing funding the research to identify targets that then they out-license or sell to pharma, and pharma then develops it, right? That's how they make their money. So their ROI, their return on investment, is very straightforward. It's time to market. Can we get drugs into the hands of clinicians as soon as possible in order to treat those patients? So for them, the ability to identify targets quickly that have a high probability of success drives their ROI, obviously. And because they have relationships with every major pharmaceutical company literally in the world, they become a channel partner for Predictive Oncology. They can open the doors. So if we can help them be successful, their pharmaceutical companies become successful, and then Predictive Oncology is successful as well. So that's a strategy, by the way. It's a business strategy. There's another company we're speaking with right now, very similar business model, where they are doing business with 19 of the top 20 pharmaceutical companies in the world, and they want to bolt our pedal platform, the AI machine learning platform, onto the front end of their discovery. So McGee, I just touched on McGee. The outcome of the work with McGee, the study with McGee, is very tangible. We are now utilizing the data that we have from those 235 ovarian patients and the results, the ability to predict overall outcome, short and long-term outcome, is now being developed as we're actually developing now the format for this, an AI-driven decision support tool for oncologists to use to plan treatment for ovarian patients. So it's not just a drug discovery application. This is now a decision support tool for physicians, oncologists, to be able to plan treatments for ovarian patients in particular. So when I talk about the model and talk about the predictive, the probability of success, this heat map is really what is the output. It's the output of the workflow, right? So what's light pink was a predicted miss. What's light blue was a predicted hit. What's dark red is an actual hit, and what's dark blue is an actual miss rather, and dark blue is an actual hit. So we looked at hundreds of different combinations with thousands of drugs, and we were able to, that timeline that I just gave you, we are able to do in a matter of weeks, by various iterations and combinations of drugs, existing drugs that are under development, and the tumor type, the solid tumor, and identify very quickly with a high degree of accuracy whether or not whether it's likely to make it through drug development or whether it's likely to fail. And again, this is about accelerating the decision-making process. We don't do drug discovery. We accelerate other people's efforts to do drug discovery. They bring a biomarker, they bring a molecule, they bring a compound, we evaluate it. We basically, so think about it in this way. Think about it in this way. Whether you think about it as we are looking 5 years into the future, 5 years into the drug development process, or whether we're truncating that process by 5 years, by introducing the heterogeneity of the patient at the beginning as part of the modeling process, that is what allows us to not only accelerate the decision-making process, but accelerate that process with a high degree of confidence. So we can do it in many ways. Look at hundreds of compounds. We can find top compounds, tens of compounds to identify strongest candidate. All of these things really mean one thing to a biopharmaceutical company. It's that, drugs go off patent every single day. And what they want to do is replenish the pipeline in those portfolios. So essentially what we're doing is accelerating their ability to identify targets that they can patent quickly, extend the patent life, and fill that pipeline. So if you can extend the patent life on a drug, you're basically adding $1 billion, $2 billion a year to their bottom line. So in the end, that's what we do. That's what our contribution to the process is. I don't have to talk about the biologics business, but what I should say is that we do operate on the continuum of drug discovery and drug development, right? So we work with our partners to accelerate that discovery process, but we also have a GMP facility in Alabama that does formulations of solubility. So once drugs are identified, they have to be formulated, that you have to do solubility testing, absorption, all those wonderful things that from a practical point of view to make sure that drug can be delivered in the way it's supposed to be delivered or intended to be delivered. So that is really part of the continuum of what we provide, but it's not really the primary focus. It's not our core business. So in terms of the core business, what does that look like? Well, what I can do is point to global pharma contracts that are being done, have been done, are being done right now. There are a couple that were just done probably in the last month or two, where it was an $85 million upfront payment to help either identify or accelerate drug discovery. So Atomwise, Cytoreason, Verve, Schrodinger, these are companies that work with biopharmaceutical companies to do similar things at different points, different inflection points of the drug discovery, drug development process. So this is actually our business model and our revenue model. It is to partner with biopharma to help them identify, accelerate, and then monetize their assets. And in the process of doing that, we are able to, through milestone payments or through an upfront payment combined with milestone payments, fund the company through these contracts. So basically, in summary, even though our company's been around quite a while, I came in, I was on the board for about a year, and then a year ago I was asked to be CEO of the company. And so in that last year, we've completely reevaluated the assets of the company, focused entirely on accelerating drug discovery, only in oncology, primarily preclinical, early stage, small molecule, gynecological for sure, because that's, as I said, the preponderance of samples that we have are gynecological. Ovarian is a very key target for us right now. So we basically the company has been around for a decade, but the focus of the company and really the launch of the company, trajectory of the company has really happened just in the last year. I'm not taking full credit, by the way, for that. I'm just saying when I came in, we repositioned the company in order to do that. So we have a validated platform, which is now, it's scientifically validated, technically validated, and now commercially validated. So we are ready to do business, essentially. We have a strong barrier to entry because while many people have AI, not very many companies, if any, have the kind of resources that we have in terms of the tumor samples and the drug response data. And by the way, 200,000 pathology slides, which are currently being digitized. So we're looking now at the structure that's coming off the pathology and integrating that with the drug response data. And we're gaining momentum. So gaining momentum in the market. And I believe that's the last slide. Did I make it within 25 minutes? Yeah. Does anyone have any, I'm sorry, is there a time for a question or?